The Bromford and High Peak Railway is the culmination of one man's lifetime hobby. Located in the Midlands, the railway naturally reflects his personal likes and memories. Living near the East Coast Main Line brought a love for Gresley's magnificent Pacifics, and here we see the post-war Queen of Scots entering Bromford Station. The coaches are modelled on the 1928 Pullman stock, which was in use on the Queen of Scots until 1962, when it was transferred to the southern region for the Bournemouth Bell. Following prototype practice, this set of coaches sometimes bears the Bournemouth Bell roof boards and is headed by a rebuilt bullied Pacific. The detailed work on the coaches is magnificent, the authentic Pullman livery being captured to perfection.
The A4 is named after its designer, Sir Nigel Gresley. It is in post-war livery as number 7, unlike its prototype, which is preserved in this livery and condition with its pre-war number of 4498. The model used to run as 4468 Mallard, with skirts, but was recently defrocked for its change of identity.
As the train departs on the main line, we see the extent of the layout at Bromford. This is the principal station on the system, and broadly follows Midland practice. To the left are the engine sheds, which we will visit later. To the right, the extensive goods yards. The train is now passing the main junction, which allows a variety of route setting, including reverse loops to change direction. In the loco yard head shunt behind the train can be seen the rebuilt bullied Pacific, which is the alternative motive power when the roof boards are changed to the Bournemouth Bell. This is Blue Star, the prototype of which is currently being restored. Mention of the Bournemouth Bell leads us to that South Coast resort, which was also the destination of a much-lamented lost train, the Parcels Express. Here we see the Pines arriving at Bromford behind a BR Class 9F. This represents the train in its last years, as well recorded by Ivo Peters and others. The Somerset and Dorset has a special place in the hearts of most enthusiasts, and inclusion of a model of its only named express was a must. The 9F is the most recent locomotive on the railway, and the Pines has usually been powered by LMS locos. In the background can be seen a 2P and Black 5, which will shortly come off shed to reverse the train. This action models the scene which was enacted at Bath Green Park from the 1880s until September 1962, when the Parcels Express arrived at the station to reverse and travel over the Somerset and Dorset for the last time. The Pine stock is due for partial replacement, but at present includes panelled and flush-sided coaches.
The 2P and Black 5 come off shed ready to back down to the train. Before the advent of the 9F, this pair with the regular Pines power, and are finished in mid-30s LMS livery. Black 5s and 2Ps were regular S&D classes, and 2P number 634 was originally built for the line, in 1928 as number 45. She was part of a batch of 3 which were turned out in the smart S&D royal blue livery, and spent most of her working life on that railway.
At the other end, the 9F comes off the train. This model was built by Vic Green and has been featured in the Model Railway Press. It was shown at the 1987 Model Engineering Exhibition before coming to the Bromford and High Peak. The prototype was again an S&D engine, as it was the locomotive used for trials in 1960, subsequently being allocated to the line. As we observe the departure of the Pines from the country lane alongside the station, we can see the detailed work that goes into a model of this size. In the foreground is the roof of the building, which we will see from the other side later on, and the track work in between that and the train is the goods yard throat. The train is now running off the main line in order to reverse direction. Some 11 miles of wiring have been used on the railway, and the electrical installation has been the brainchild of one man.
With the train now gone, the 9F can go on shed. This platform road is signalled for reverse working, allowing the 9F to come up to the entrance to the shed.
The locomotive facilities at Bromford consist of two separate sheds divided by a through road to the turntable, up which the 9F is going. The shed nearest to the station is an LMS shed, outside which can be seen an LMS Duchess and 8F, and also two more East Coast veterans, large and small boilered Ivat Atlantics. As Bromford is an LMS station, the branch push-pull train is LMS. The locomotive is a Stanier 044 tank built in 1932. Probably Stanier had little to do with the design, which was merely an updated version of the classic Midland Johnson passenger tanks. As the Pines has gone, the push-pull can depart to serve local stations. In the countryside, a small halt has been provided on the main line. This is at the junction for Bromford, and we can see the Pines roar through. The halt's platforms are staggered either side of the level crossing. Long sweeping curves and mainline straights feature on this railway, enabling full-length trains to be run at prototypical speed. The main circuit is over 1 scale mile long.
The second shed at Bromford follows Great Western practice. Here we see a hall come off shed. In the foreground is the approach track to the high-level coaling stage. This view is taken from above the water tower.
Locomotives pass under the water tower to gain access to the main line, direct access to which is afforded at the platform end. The goods yard also has direct access from the main line, and the hall now reverses off to the goods yard. In the foreground is the breakdown train, which was previously seen in earlier views, taken from the opposite side of the line here. 7mm scale gives the model builder great scope for detailing, and the 34 locomotives in use on the railway have come from some of the country's leading model makers, including Beeson and Vic Green. Trackside details and stock also benefit from the substantial size of the scale, and trains are modelled as a whole. The hall is taking a West Country milk train out of the sidings and is a reminder of the once substantial traffic that worked over our railways. The Great Western built a great variety of milk stock, from siphons to tanks. In the early days, open slatted vans were used when milk was transported in churns and were codenamed siphons. Later on, bulk carrying was made in 6-wheeled glass line tanks.
From the lower sidings we can see a typical British mixed goods train emerge. This is basically loose coupled, but with a fitted head. It's hauled by a Great Western 280, and the stock illustrates the extent of goods traffic which ran over the British railway system. Four-wheel wagons predominate, the majority open to the elements, carrying the lifeblood of the nation's industry, from coal and minerals to steel girders and cables. At the back of the train run private owners' wagons, carrying coal to local depots at stations throughout the country.
High Peak, the second station in the railway's title, is built on an embankment and has two island platforms. It's based on Great Western practice, but with LMS signalling. The outer faces serve the lines from Bromford, the main platforms being located on the main running line. As the freight draws to a stand, we can see the detail incorporated on the platforms. Small details like these help to bring a layout to life. The 28 is waiting on the main line for the milk train. General goods traffic would normally wait for perishable traffic, where speed was of the essence before the advent of modern refrigerants and preservatives.
The Great Western's 28XX type consisted of two main subclasses, the original Churchwood design of the early 1900s and the Collet update of the 30s. This model is based on the latter and features the side window cab, the fire iron tunnel and a different motion plate.
As the train moves out, we can see details of the platform ends at High Peak. The signal box is fully detailed and stands alongside the physical junction of the tracks. The line to the left foreground is a sand drag only. Great Western mainline trains are represented by a king with a mixed rake of collet and churchward stock. The longest coaches were 70 feet in length, and two are included in this rake. The railway also boasts two castles, one each from Beeson and Bit Green, and a Hawksworth County in the Great Western Express passenger stud. The king was built by John Brearley. Other Great Western locomotives include a Grange and a Hall already seen. Beneath and behind the station is a tramway, which is not yet operational, and the overhead wiring for the system will be seen behind the King as she departs from the other end of the station with her West Country Express. The locomotive has fully working inside motion, and the crossheads can be seen as she passes the camera. It's the policy for all models on this layout to have fully operating inside motion, and those models which do not have it are replaced or modified wherever possible. The train is now passing over the junction with the reversing loops, which gives access to the holding sidings. Emerging from the goods holding sidings is an LMS mineral train. This is running alongside a coal train, which is headed by a Great Western 282 tank. This latter represents the enormous coal traffic which the Great Western handled in South Wales, and for which these tanks were specifically designed. The LMS mineral train is headed by an ex-London and North Western 080 goods locomotive. These simple engines were known as Super Ds and were derived from Webb's compound 280s. Some Super Ds were built new and some converted from the compounds and represented the Premier Line's approach to goods motive power. The model features the H-pattern spokes used on many LNWR classes and captures the very basic appearance to perfection. The wagons illustrate the low-sided type used for carrying stone traffic, which being heavy did not need the normal high-side stock in use for coal traffic and general goods.
This view is taken from an angle similar to our cover photograph, the turntable and sheds being to the right. The Super D is on the branch line which joins the main line at Bromford and awaits the passage of a short LMS Express. This represents the Bradford portion of a Midland line express and is hauled by a Duchess. This is one of two models of the class, as built without streamlining or smoke deflectors, and is another Beeson product. The other Duchess, with deflectors, has been seen on shed.
The Stanier 8F provides a contrast with the Super D, as it was the ultimate LMS mainline goods design. With taper boiler, outside valve gear, a pony truck and high-sided tender, only the obvious difference is it was a world apart from its predecessor, although both ran side by side to the end of steam. The train is fast goods with a fitted head of 8 vacuum-braked wagons, carrying many specialist loads, as is the Great Western goods seen earlier. In close-up, we can see the variety of wagons that once existed, and which can only be seen today in model form. As the freight disappears, so does the passenger. The single-line token apparatus is modelled at the point where the branch joins the main line, and as soon as the platform is clear, the Super D gets the road and is able to proceed. In the background can be seen the station forecourt, where vintage vehicles await passengers, and behind that is the entrance to the goods yard. The diamond on the signal post indicates that the line is track-circuited, and the model follows this, with a sophisticated route-setting control system. One master panel controls all movements, the changing of points setting the electrical connections automatically. Moving along the platform line, the Super D is halted at the starting signal to await the return of the push-pull train. A noticeable feature of the railway is the ability for long trains to be reversed through complicated point work and around comparatively sharp curves. This is achieved through a combination of good track laying, heavy rolling stock, sprung buffers and loose couplings. The track work is Pico, with mainline point work tailor-made for its locations. H&M point motors are used throughout, which also switch electrical connections. In some instances, switch crossovers are in use, which avoids problems on reverse curves. As the ballast train departs, we see the entrance to the goods yard about the signal box. Following the Super D is another LMS locomotive, the ubiquitous 4F. She's drawing a train consisting of LNER bogie wagons and will be dropping them off in the goods yard.
The goods yard itself is modelled on LMS practice and occupies a large space in the middle of the main Bromford area, behind the bay platform. The goods shed road and the two storage sidings are parallel to the platforms, whilst the coal sidings and cattle docks are angled away to allow access for road vehicles to the goods shed.
As the 4F goes past, the working inside motion can be seen to advantage. This was fitted after the model was bought for the railway. She's running up the main line past the signal box before reversing into the goods yard. All the signal boxes on the layout are modelled on LNWR boxes, the signals being LMS standard. Those at High Peak are to be replaced by Great Western ones at some time in the future.
Signals are not yet fully operational, although they have been in position on the layout for many years. Signals include ground signals where necessary, particularly here at the main goods yard and locomotive yard throat, where the train is seen being shunted off the main line. All track work is bullhead with full chair detail. Small trackside details include spare sleepers, gangers, gas lamps, chairs and so on. In the background, the small goods yard crane is prominent.
Once the brake van has been uncoupled, the locomotive draws its train back out of the yard before setting back into the goods reception siding.
Further details are evident in this view, including the ganger's barrow, with its wheels removed, wire fencing and bushes. The layout has been built up and detailed over a number of years by a number of individuals, some working full-time on it, surely every modeller's dream. Only in this way is it possible to produce a huge layout like this and have it fully operational. A recent change of location, despite very careful planning, meant that it was out of full use for nearly a year.
Cattle pens featured at most stations in steam days, but livestock traffic is now a thing of the past on our railways. Having left the hoppers in the reception siding, the 4F draws out onto the main line before setting back to collect its goods train from the goods shed road.
The breakdown train's brake coach is an ex-LNWR vehicle, whilst the train itself is partly freelance. The full extent of the goods yard will be seen in this scene, all sidings fanning out from the point under the loading gauge, as the 4F backs down towards the goods yard to pick up its outgoing train. Although telegraph poles are prominent, no wires are modelled, as they would be easily damaged and would get in the way when maintenance was required.
These wagons illustrate a further variety of goods traffic, from furniture containers to timber of various kinds. This view emphasizes the amount of detail incorporated in the model.
A wide variety of wagons is used, illustrating the enormous variety that existed on our railways. They're normally made up into set trains, to go with specific locomotives, to model a particular train or type of train. Most of the wagons are scratch-built, although a few of the better types of kit are in use, some having been specifically commissioned for use on the railway.
As the 4F pulls out onto the head shunt, a further Great Western train passes non-stop. Notice the gas tank wagon at the front of the train, which is a Parcels Express. These wagons were needed for replenishing supplies of coaches, many of which remain gaslit to the end of their days.
The famous Great Western siphons were originally milk wagons, but the bogie varieties of Siphon G and Siphon H, together with monsters and sundry other vans, were used on parcels and newspaper trains such as this. The 47s were seldom photographed on these trains, as they ran by night, serving all the extremities of the Great Western system. The West Country newspaper train probably being the best known. The train is now complete, and the 4F can depart. A yard like this would probably have its own shunter, as the locomotive shed is adjacent, but most country station yards were served by pickup goods trains, where the train engine did all the shunting, and this is what has been illustrated here.
The standard LMS brake van brings up the rear of the train as the 4F sets off, illustrating the traditional British pickup freight. Out in the country, a dust cart awaits the passage of a train. Langley Halt represents a wooden platformed halt, as was popular from the turn of the century. Running fast along the open main line, the Churchward 47XX wheels the newspaper train towards Langley Halt. These locomotives were designated mixed traffic and were frequently used on overnight newspaper and milk trains to the West Country. As the 47 passes, the cricketers in the background typify the lovely pastoral scene which always seems to be associated with memories of the steam railway.